terrifying forest, the creepiest encounter ever. Some forests are quiet, some forests are peaceful, and some forests are not meant to be entered. Tonight's story takes us deep into the Black Hollow Forest, a place locals avoid after dark because those who enter don't always come back the same. The camping trip that went wrong. Jenna, Mark, and Kyle were best friends, adventure junkies always looking for their next thrill. So, when Kyle suggested an overnight camping trip in Black Hollow Forest, the others didn't hesitate. "I've been there before," Kyle bragged. "It's just another forest." Famous last words. The first sign of trouble. They arrived just before sunset. The forest was beautiful. Tall pines stretching into the sky, golden light filtering through the branches. But Jenna noticed something strange. No birds, no bugs, no wind. Just silence. Mark laughed it off. Finally, some peace and quiet. But Jenna couldn't shake the feeling, like they were being watched. The path that disappeared. They hiked an hour in, set up camp, and built a fire. As night fell, the forest grew darker than they expected. Even with the moon out, the trees seemed to swallow the light. Kyle joked, "Maybe it's haunted." No one laughed, because that's when they realized the path they came in on was gone. The whispering shadows. Jenna pulled out her phone. No signal. Mark lit another lantern, but the light didn't reach far, and then they heard it. Whispers, faint, circling the campsite. "Do you hear that?" Jenna whispered. Kyle nodded, eyes wide, but Mark stood up, annoyed. "It's just the wind." Except the air was perfectly still. The stranger by the fire. Mark stomped toward the trees. "Hello, who's out there?" Silence, but when he turned back, someone was sitting by the fire. A man, dressed in ragged clothes, head down, hands folded neatly on his lap. They froze. He hadn't been there seconds before. "Sir, are you okay?" Jenna asked, voice shaking. The man didn't move, didn't blink, just smiled. "You shouldn't be here." Kyle grabbed a flashlight, aiming it at the stranger's face. But when the light hit him, the man's eyes were completely black. And then he spoke. "You shouldn't be here." The fire flickered, and he vanished, gone, like he was never there. The run never ended. "Pack up, we're leaving," Kyle shouted. They grabbed what they could and bolted into the dark. Branches scratched their arms, roots caught their feet. But the whispers followed, closer, louder. Jenna glanced back and saw the man, running, right behind them, but his feet never touched the ground. The forest that doesn't let go. They ran until they saw light, the edge of the forest, freedom. But when they burst through the trees, they were standing back at their campsite, the fire still burning, the man still sitting there, smiling, waiting. The escape, or was it? Nobody knows how they got out. Jenna says she blacked out, waking up the next morning in the car. Mark refuses to talk about it. And Kyle? Kyle moved out of state, but sometimes, late at night, Jenna swears she hears whispers outside her window. And once, she saw black eyes staring at her from the tree line. Would you camp in a forest with a dark history? Or would you turn around and never look back? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this story, hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for more terrifying tales. Until next time, sleep well. The unexplained forest. You won't believe what happened. Some forests hide secrets, some forests hold memories, but some forests don't want you to leave. Tonight's story takes us to Black Hollow Forest, a stretch of wilderness in Montana. It's not on most maps, but locals know it well. Not because they visit, but because they avoid it. Why? Because people don't just get lost there. They vanish. The last hike. It started with a group of 4 friends, Emily, Jake, Sierra, and Nate. They weren't ghost hunters. They weren't thrill seekers, just hikers looking for a weekend adventure. Jake found the trail online. No reviews, no ratings. Just a post that said, "Hidden trail, beautiful views, don't stay after dark." They thought it was a joke. It wasn't. The trail that shouldn't exist. The entrance was barely visible. No signs, no markers, just a narrow dirt path winding into the trees. But the moment they stepped inside, the air changed. It got colder, quieter, like the forest was holding its breath. "Creepy," Sierra muttered, snapping a picture. That picture would be the last thing her phone ever captured. The missing hours. They hiked for hours, but something felt off. The sun stayed frozen in the sky. It never moved. Jake checked his watch. 2:14 p.m. Then, an hour later, 14 p.m. "Your watch is broken," Emily laughed. But it wasn't, because when Nate checked his phone, it said the same thing. And then, the birds stopped singing. The man in the trees. That's when they saw him. A figure, half hidden between the trees, standing perfectly still, too tall, too thin, face hidden by shadows. Jake waved. The man didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there, watching. The group hurried down the path, laughing nervously. But every time they looked back, the man was closer. Lost in the loop, panic set in. They turned around, rushing back the way they came. But the trail kept winding forward, never backward. Like the forest itself was shifting. The man was gone now, but something else followed. A soft whisper, right behind them. Jake spun around, flashlight shaking. Nothing, but Emily's face was pale. "I heard it," she whispered. "Turn around." The cabin that shouldn't be there. Just when they thought they were doomed, they stumbled into a clearing. In the middle, an old wooden cabin, roof sagging with age. No lights, no sound, but the front door was open. "Do we go inside?" Nate asked, breathless. They didn't have a choice. The path behind them had vanished. The room with no exit. Inside, the cabin was worse. Empty, cold. The walls were covered in handprints. Small, large, some too big to be human. Jake tried calling 911, no signal. Sierra lit a candle she found on the table. That's when they saw it. Carved into the wall, "Don't blow out the light." Nate laughed nervously, but when he turned around, Emily was gone. The whispers get louder. "Emily," Jake shouted, running out the door. But there was no forest outside anymore. Just blackness, endless, cold, and the whispering. It was everywhere now. Sierra gripped Jake's arm, voice shaking. "The candle, don't let it go out." Nate didn't listen. He blew on the flame, and the room collapsed into darkness. The forest keeps its own. The next morning, a search team found Sierra, alone, shivering at the trailhead. She didn't speak, didn't blink, just kept staring into the forest. Jake, Nate, and Emily? Never found. But the ranger who led the search saw something strange. 4 sets of footprints led into the woods. Only one set came back. And in the dirt beside the trailhead, someone had carved one word: stay. Would you go in? To this day, no one knows what happened in Black Hollow Forest. The trail doesn't show up on GPS, the cabin, gone. But hikers still report hearing whispers. And if you ever find yourself on a path that shouldn't exist, turn around. Because some trails don't lead out. Have you ever been somewhere that felt wrong? Tell me in the comments. And if you like this story, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more terrifying tales. Until next time, sleep well. The chilling forest, a nightmare come to life. There are forests that breathe, forests that watch, and forests that never let you leave. Tonight's story is about a forest in Washington State, one that hikers avoid, one where nightmares become real. The Forbidden Trail. It started with Maya, Chris, and Jordan, 3 college friends on a weekend camping trip. They weren't locals, they didn't know the stories, but the park ranger did. Stick to the main trail, he warned. Don't take the path with the red markers. They laughed it off. It's just a forest, right? The red markers. The first day was perfect. Clear skies, fresh air. They set up camp near a creek and roasted marshmallows by the fire. But around midnight, the whispering started. Soft, faint, coming from the woods. Maya stood, flashlight in hand. Did you hear that? Chris shrugged. Probably the wind. But when Maya shined the light toward the trees, the wind wasn't blowing, and the whispering was getting louder. Lost in the woods. The next morning, Jordan suggested a short hike, just an hour. Stretch their legs before heading home. That's when they saw it. A narrow trail, marked by faded red ribbons tied to branches. The trail the ranger warned about. Maya hesitated. "But Chris," he grinned. "Come on, what's the worst that could happen?" So they went in, and the forest swallowed them whole. The forest moves. At first, it was just a normal trail, quiet, peaceful. But after 30 minutes, Maya noticed something strange. The red ribbons. They were fresher now, like someone had just tied them. Then Jordan stopped. "Guys, look." On the ground, half buried in dirt, a shoe. Old, torn, covered in dried mud, too small for an adult, too big for a child. Chris laughed nervously. Probably someone got lost, but Maya's voice trembled. If they got lost, where did they go? The thing in the trees. That's when they heard it. Footsteps, heavy, slow, circling them. Chris spun around, flashlight flickering. "Hello? Who's there?" No answer. Just the crunch of leaves. Closer. And then the trees shifted, not swaying, moving, closing in, like the forest itself was alive. Night falls too fast. Panic set in. They turned back, or tried to. But the trail was gone. The red ribbons now led deeper into the woods. And the sun? It was setting too fast. Jordan checked his phone, 4:12 p.m. Then, 30 seconds later, 8:47 p.m. "Time's jumping," Maya whispered, tears in her eyes. "Something's wrong." Chris grabbed her hand. "We need to run." But as they sprinted, the whispering returned, right beside them. The cabin that shouldn't exist. Out of nowhere, they stumbled into a clearing, and in the middle, a cabin. Old, rotting. But the lights were on. Jordan hesitated. Maya didn't answer because she was staring at the window, and inside, someone was staring back. Chris bolted toward the cabin, kicked the door open. Empty. Just a table, 3 chairs, and a map of the forest pinned to the wall. But something was wrong with the map. The trails? They'd moved when they looked away, like the forest was rearranging itself. Then, the lights flickered. And when they came back on, Jordan was gone. Only 2 made it, Aya screamed, grabbing Chris's arm. "Where's Jordan?" But Chris was frozen, staring at the map. Because now, there were 3 red dots. 1, 2, and a third deeper in the forest, moving, fast, right toward them. "Run!" They didn't stop, not until the trees thinned, not until they burst onto the main road, gasping for air. The forest keeps its secrets. The rangers searched for days. They found the campsite, they found the trail, but they never found Jordan or the cabin. But here's the strangest part. 2 weeks later, Maya's phone buzzed. A new picture, sent from Jordan's number. It showed the forest at night, blurry, dark. But in the distance, a figure stood beneath the trees, tall, thin, holding a red ribbon. Would you go in? To this day, no one hikes the Red Mark Trail. The rangers won't talk about it. The locals pretend it doesn't exist. But if you ever find yourself deep in the woods and you see red ribbons tied to branches, turn around, because some forests don't just watch you, they take you. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more terrifying tales. And tell me in the comments, would you follow the red trail? Until next time, sleep well.